feels like forever. They won't make it in time. The mathematics is clear even if the specific numbers keep changing.
Stop struggling!
Construction designed 60 years ago.
You'll kill us
when
both!
Our engineers believed we should stop everything, including
Kasai, the
hope
protocol
itself.
is updating.
Hours of
Affirmative.
cutting required.
Rerouting neural
Less than
pathways.
that in breathable
Fetal
air
integrity
remaining.
is stable.
But they keep cutting anyway. Let me tell you how we got here. 18 hours earlier, I didn't believe in humans. I mean, I knew they existed. Everyone in Verith space knew about the Human Union Liaison Program, the technical observers and equipment consultants they'd been sending to our stations for the past 3 years as part of some diplomatic initiative I'd never bothered to understand. But I'd never worked with one directly, never even spoken to one. Station Verith 9 had 5 of them. I'd seen them in the corridors, sometimes always together, always moving with that peculiar human gait that looked too casual for people working on a listening post in deep space. They wore their hair in ways that violated every Verith grooming standard. They ate food that smelled like chemical warfare. They laughed too loud and worked in their shirt sleeves even when the ambient temperature required thermal gear. I didn't understand them, none of us did. The explosion happened at 1427 station time. I was in the central hub with 3rd Engineer Kaylee and half the command staff running a diagnostic on the long-range sensor array. Kaylee was 6 months pregnant, working carefully around her expanding midsection, humming something that might have been a lullaby, or might have been the diagnostic completion tone. With Kaylee, it was hard to tell. The diagnostic was at 73% when the hub's atmosphere turned into fire. No warning, no preliminary fluctuation. One moment I was reading pressure values on a display panel. The next moment the panel was gone, and I was flying backward through air that had stopped being air. I hit something. A wall, a bulkhead, a structural support. The impact folded me in half and knocked every cubic centimeter of oxygen out of my lungs. I couldn't breathe, couldn't see, couldn't hear anything except a sound like the universe ending. Something grabbed me. The emergency pod's automated retrieval system designed to activate during catastrophic decompression and pull anyone within range into the nearest survival module. I felt myself dragged across deck plating, pulled through a doorway I couldn't see deposited on cold metal floor, while the pod's atmosphere seal engaged with a sound like a coffin closing. The noise stopped. I lay there in sudden, absolute silence, gasping for air that burned my throat and tasted like metal and fear. Around me, I could hear other breathing, ragged, desperate, alive. I counted 5 other people in the darkness before the emergency lighting engaged. Dim red panels that turned everything the color of old blood. Specialist Thessa, Junior Engineer Vorik, Communications Officer Selen, 2 technicians whose names I couldn't remember through the ringing in my head. 6 of us. Out of 27 people who'd been in the hub, I pulled myself to the pod's porthole window and looked out at what remained of Station Verith 9. Section 6 was gone. Just gone. The entire central hub replaced by a ragged hole surrounded by twisted metal and frozen atmosphere crystals that caught the light like broken glass. I could see bodies tumbling in the vacuum. Some in emergency suits that hadn't sealed fast enough. Some with no suits at all. I looked for Kaylee. Couldn't find her among the debris. Told myself that meant she'd made it to another pod, that she was alive somewhere else on the station. I told myself that lie for approximately 45 seconds before my engineering training reasserted itself, and I stopped being able to believe things that contradicted visible evidence. The pod's status panel showed our situation. Atmosphere 6 hours at current consumption rate with 6 occupants. Power 72 hours from emergency cell. Hull integrity 98%. Communications offline, antenna array destroyed. We were alive in a sealed box with 6 hours of air. No way to call for help. No way to know if anyone else had survived. I activated the pod's external sensors. Audio only, the visual pickups had been damaged. Through the static, I could hear voices. Human voices. They were speaking human standard with accents I didn't recognize, using terminology from technical manuals, coordinating with calm efficiency that didn't match our situation at all. One voice rose above the others. Male. Authoritative. Count off. Pause, then, Iris, here. I've got a hull breach on my scanner. Section 6 is gone. Silas, here. I'm at Junction 9. Pressure's dropping on my end. Jonah, longer pause. Pain in that voice. I'm here. I think my left arm is broken. Elena, present. Structural integrity compromised in multiple sections. 4 voices, plus the first one. 5 humans, out of 5 assigned to the station. 0 Verith voices on the comm. They didn't know yet, couldn't know that 22 Verith crew members were dead, that 6 of us were trapped in survival pods that their count-off had just confirmed they were the only functional personnel left. I listened to them coordinate. Listen to the one called Marcus Webb. I learned his name from the comm chatter take command with quiet certainty that suggested he'd done this before. Everybody moved toward Junction 12. It's the structural node. If anything is still holding, it's that. They converged at Junction 12. I heard Marcus splint Jonah's broken arm, using what sounded like conduit pipe, an emergency cord, talking him through it in a flat, practical voice that left no room for panic. When he was done, he stood. I couldn't see him, but I heard it in the way the acoustics changed, in the way everyone else shifted their attention. Here's where we are, Marcus said, his voice carrying through damaged corridors with perfect clarity. The station is not dead. It's damaged. There's a difference. And that difference is the only thing we're going to think about from this moment forward. I leaned closer to the audio pickup. We have power. We have atmosphere in 3 sections. We have tools. What we do not have is time to stand here and feel bad about our situation. Someone else spoke, the one called Elena, female voice, older with an accent that suggested human standard was her second language. What exactly do we have time to do? Marcus answered without hesitation. Build. Build. Not wait for rescue. Not activate emergency beacon. Not conserve resources and hope. Build. Nobody argued. These humans trapped on a destroyed alien station with limited time didn't argue with their leader's decision to spend their remaining hours working instead of waiting. They got to work. I listened to Marcus assign tasks with precision. Iris on station mapping, Silas on finding communication hardware, Jonah on life support analysis despite his broken arm, Elena on structural assessment, Marcus himself on power grid analysis. Iris completed the station map in 40 minutes. I heard her talking Marcus through it, her voice quick and clinical. Section 6 completely gone. Sections 4, 7, and 11 show structural damage. The reactor is intact but isolated in Section 10. Main power conduits were severed at the junction point in Section 7. Section 7's accessible, Marcus asked. Technically, the corridor is intact. The junction room has hull stress fractures. I wouldn't want to spend an hour in there. How long would the job take? Pause. Reconnecting 3 conduit lines at a damaged junction with standard tools. 90 minutes. Maybe 2 hours if the splice points are corroded. I'll go, said Silas. I'll go with you, Marcus said. That's when Elena objected. One of us should stay here. The atmospheric processors need manual monitoring. Section 3's pressure valve has been drifting. I'll monitor, Jonah said. I can reset a pressure valve one-handed. There was something in his voice. Not just pain from the broken arm. Something deeper that sounded like determination mixed with grief. I would learn later that Jonah had recognized names on the Verith crew manifest. People he'd known. Third engineer Kaylee had been one of them. His girlfriend had been Verith. He'd learned our systems to understand her world better. Now her world was gone and he was resetting pressure valves with one hand because that was what you did when you had a job to do. Elena's voice came through again, harder now, more urgent. Marcus, wait, this is a mistake. Section 7 is unstable. If it collapses while you're in there, we lose both of you. We lose our leader and our signal specialist. We lose any chance. We lose nothing, Marcus interrupted gently but firmly, because the section won't collapse. You can't know that. You're right, I can't. But I know that if we don't reconnect the reactor, we don't get full power. And if we don't get full power, we don't get full atmospheric processing. And without that, we don't get enough air to do anything else on the repair list. The reactor comes first. Everything else is built on that foundation. Silence. Then Elena again, quieter. You're willing to, for maybe power. I'm willing to work for definitely power, Marcus said. There's a difference. He kept walking. Silas followed. I sat in my pod and listened to them enter. Section 7 heard the manual hatch release grinding open, heard them step into a room 10 degrees colder than the rest of the station. Through the audio pickup, I could hear something else too, a sound like wind through metal, except there was no wind. Just stressed composite panels flexing under forces they weren't designed to handle. Pretty, Silas said, trying for humor. Don't touch the ceiling, Marcus said. I was not planning to touch the ceiling. They got to work. For the next 2 hours and 17 minutes, I listened to Marcus Webb and Silas Okafor rebuild a power connection in a room that could have killed them at any moment. I heard them talk through each step with focused calm that suggested they'd done dangerous work before and understood that panic was a luxury neither could afford. The conduits had been severed in the explosion. The splice points were fused. They had to cut back damaged sections, re-terminate connections, Splice everything together with tools designed for maintenance, not emergency repairs in structurally compromised environments. I counted the number of times the ceiling panels flexed while they worked. 17 times, some small, some significant enough that I heard both men stop breathing until the stress released. They never talked about stopping. At 1 hour, 41 minutes, they completed the first conduit. The atmospheric processors changed pitch. I felt it through the pod's insulated walls, a shift in ambient vibration that meant machines were receiving power they needed to stop struggling and start functioning. Section 2 processor just came back to full cycle, Iris said over the comm. Her voice carried something that might have been hope. Marcus and Silas kept working. Second conduit at 2 hours 8 minutes. Third conduit at 2 hours 17 minutes. When Marcus closed the junction panel and stepped back, I heard him take one long breath. Just one. Then he picked up his tools and headed for the exit. Full reactor power hit the station like a wave. The lights in my pod shifted from dim red to bright white. Temperature started climbing as heating systems engaged. The atmospheric processors hit full efficiency, and air quality improved enough that I stopped tasting metal with every breath. My pod's status display updated. Atmosphere from 6 hours remaining to 14 hours remaining, accounting for improved processing efficiency. I sat with my hand on the porthole window and tried to understand what I just witnessed. 2 humans had entered a failing section, spent over 2 hours reconnecting power in a room that could have collapsed at any moment, and emerged with enough restored capacity to more than double everyone's survival window. They hadn't done it for themselves, they'd done it for the station, for the systems, for the possibility that someone might still be alive somewhere who would need that power, that heat, that air. For people like me. Marcus's voice came through the external speaker, not directed at me, but carrying through corridors where audio sensors could pick it up. Station's breathing. Now we figure out how to make it talk. I watched through the porthole as distant lights activated in sections that had been dark. Saw the glow of restored power spreading through Vareth 9 like blood returning to oxygen-starved tissue. And I thought about what Marcus had said earlier. The station is not dead. It's damaged. There's a difference. The difference I was beginning to understand wasn't about the station at all. It was about the people trying to save it, about humans who looked at limited time and decided to spend it working, who calculated risk by what needed to be fixed instead of odds of survival, who went into collapsing sections because that was what the job required and they didn't know how to do it halfway. I checked my pod's updated oxy gauge. 13 hours, 41 minutes remaining. Outside, I could hear Marcus coordinating with his team, assigning next tasks, moving forward because moving forward was the only option that made sense to him. I pressed my hand against the porthole and watched the lights of Vareth 9 burning bright in the darkness. Please keep working, I whispered to the humans I couldn't see, because I was beginning to believe something I would have considered impossible 8 hours ago. I was beginning to believe they might actually save us. The station had power. What it didn't have was a voice. I listened through audio sensors as Silas Okafor worked on the antenna problem. He'd found salvageable hardware in Section 8, a Vareth deep-range data relay unit that had survived the explosion because it wasn't connected to the active power grid. Old equipment, passive systems, the kind of redundant backup technology our engineers had installed 60 years ago and then forgotten about, until someone needed it to do something it was never designed for. Okay, Silas said to himself, talking through the problem out loud. Vareth relay modulator meet human comm board. You two are going to become best friends. Or pure bullshit, one or the other. I heard him disassemble components. Heard tools on circuit boards, connections being tested and rejected, and tested again. Heard him curse 3 times in 2 different languages when something didn't fit properly. 4 hours and 12 minutes after he started, the signal went out. Iris confirmed it first. Active transmission on Human Union Emergency Frequency 7. Signal strength is good. Encoding is clean. We're broadcasting. For exactly 18 minutes we had hope. Then Iris spoke again and her voice had changed. Gone flat. Clinical. The way voices do when instruments are telling you something you don't want to believe. Wait, the signal's reflecting back. We're getting echo return from the debris field. It's not reaching past 200 kilometers. Silence on the comm. The kind that happens when everyone is doing the same mental calculation and arriving at the same terrible answer. We're broadcasting into a mirror, Silas said quietly. More silence. I could hear breathing over the open channel. Could hear someone, Jonah, maybe reset a pressure valve with more force than necessary. Then Marcus spoke calm and measured and absolutely certain. EVA. We repositioned the antenna outside the debris field. With what suits? Elena asked. We don't have proper EVA equipment. The station's emergency suits are rated for 30 minutes in basic maintenance work, not engineering repairs in a debris field. Then we have 30 minutes to do engineering repairs in a debris field. I pressed closer to the audio pickup. They were talking about spacewalking in equipment designed for short-term emergency evacuation. Tourist-graded pressure suits for moving between sections during hull breaches, not precision technical work in environments filled with high-velocity wreckage. I'll go, Silas said. I built it. I fix it. You'll need someone on the antenna housing, Marcus said. The mounting brackets took structural damage. Someone needs to hold the array stable while you reposition the signal emitter. Pause. Then Elena's voice different now, quieter. Something had shifted in her. I'll go with him. I heard surprise in the silence that followed. Elena, who'd argued against the reactor mission, who'd wanted to conserve resources and wait for rescue, was volunteering for a spacewalk in substandard equipment. Welcome back to the team, Marcus said simply. I learned later from Iris what happened next. They suited up and ran through pre-EVA checklists with thorough attention that suggested they both knew exactly how many ways this could kill them. The airlock cycled. For 90 seconds only static. Then Silas spoke, his voice distorted by suit radio. Okay, visual on the debris field, it's extensive. Can you work around it? Marcus asked. Define around. I mean, can you work without dying? Oh, then maybe. Elena, you see that twisted section of hull plating at 2 o'clock? I see it. If that comes loose while we're out here, we're not going to have time to be upset about it. Just keep it in peripheral vision, and if it starts moving, tell me immediately so I can die while being adequately informed. I didn't understand the humor. Humans made jokes about death while actively risking it. It seemed like malfunction in their threat assessment protocols. Marcus told me later they worked in vacuum for 27 minutes. Silas repositioning the signal emitter array, calling out measurements and adjustments. Elena on housing brackets stabilizing mount points with tools not designed for zero-gravity operation. The debris field shifted twice. Both times their breathing changed, sharp intake, held breath, slow release when nothing hit them. At 23 minutes, Silas finished repositioning. At 27 minutes, they sealed the airlock behind them. At 28 minutes, 41 seconds, they removed helmets, and Marcus was already there with water and thermal blankets, because apparently humans understood that people who just risked death in inadequate equipment might need immediate physical comfort. Signal, Silas asked. Iris checked her scanner. Clear broadcast. We're reaching deep space. If anyone's listening, they'll hear us. Good, Elena said, breathing hard, cold from Eva. But something in her voice had changed permanently. What else needs fixing? That was the moment I understood something important about human pack bonding. They didn't just work together, they transformed each other. Elena had entered this crisis wanting to survive. She was exiting it wanting to save. I checked my pod's oxy gauge. 12 hours, 20 minutes remaining. The processors were working well with full power, but our pod's independent systems showed signs of degradation, slower response times, pressure fluctuations that shouldn't be happening. Then Iris spoke again, and something in her voice made everyone on the comm stop. I'm detecting a thermal signature in the Section 4 wall. Running detailed scan now. Pause. Longer this time. It's a Verith emergency pod. Old model, standard capacity. My hearts, both of them, stuttered. Life signs, Marcus asked quietly. Another pause. Scanner working through wall interference, trying to read through damaged structure and composite plating. 6 signatures, all viable, but their oxy gauge shows, her voice faltered, 2 hours, 15 minutes remaining. Their pod's independent life support must have taken more damage than ours did. Systems are failing faster. The numbers hit me like the explosion had. 2 hours, 15 minutes for 6 Verith crew somewhere in Section 4. My own pod showed 12 hours, 20 minutes, and I knew even that was optimistic, given processor degradation I was seeing. But somewhere on the other side of that wall, 6 people had even less time. I activated the pod's external speaker. My hand was shaking. Human team, this is Chief Engineer Theron. I'm receiving your transmission from Section 11 pod. The comm went silent. Humans on a dying station discovering someone had been listening to everything they'd done for the past 9 hours. Marcus spoke first. Of course he did. Theron, good to hear your voice. What's your status? 6 occupants in my pod. 12 hours remaining, but systems degrading. The Section 4 pod you found, they have less time than we do. Understood. Stand by. Stand by, as if I had any other option. I listened as the human team converged at Junction 12, heard them discussing approach options, heard Iris feeding them scan data on wall composition and pod location. Then I heard Marcus make a decision that violated every protocol I'd been trained to follow. We cut through. Marcus? That was Jonah, voice tight with concern mixed with certainty. The math. Tri-layer composite wall, standard Verith construction. 3 to 4 hours cutting time minimum. They have 2 hours 15 minutes. I know the math. Then you know we won't make it in time. We'll spend 3 hours cutting and arrive at a pod full of bodies. We'll use hours of our own survival buffer for nothing. We'll try, Marcus interrupted, absolutely calm, because that's what we do. We try. Silence. Then Elena. And if we fail, if we cut for 3 hours and they die anyway, then we fail having tried, which is different than not trying at all. I couldn't stay silent anymore. Activated the external speaker again. Marcus Webb, human team leader. This is Theron. Stop. Pause. Then Marcus's voice, curious but patient. Go ahead, Chief. You cannot save them in time. The mathematics is absolute. You will waste 3 hours of your survival time attempting the impossible. You should focus on your own rescue, on the people in my pod who have sufficient time remaining. Logic dictates. Theron, Marcus interrupted gently. Chief, I've been doing this for 11 years. You know what I've learned? Mathematics tells you what's probable, but it can't tell you what's possible until you try. We're trying. You will die for them. Or we'll live with them. Either way, we don't leave people behind. The certainty in his voice was absolute, unshakable. It wasn't optimism or denial. It was something else entirely, a fundamental refusal to accept that mathematics should dictate moral choices. Please, I said, and my voice cracked on the word. Please don't waste your lives on impossible calculations. Odds are for betting, Marcus said quietly. We're working. I heard him pick up the cutting torch. Heard the ignition sequence. Heard the first spark hit composite wall somewhere in Section 4, where 6 Verith crew members had 2 hours and 14 minutes to live. And something in me broke and reformed simultaneously. Because I was listening to 5 humans who'd spent 9 hours rebuilding a station that wasn't theirs, who'd spacewalked in tourist suits to fix an antenna that might save aliens they'd never met, decide to spend 3 more hours trying to save 6 people that mathematics said were already dead. That wasn't malfunction. That was something I didn't have words for yet. The cutting went on. I listened to the rhythm of it, torch engaging, grinding through composite layers, pausing while Marcus repositioned, resuming. Steady, methodical, relentless. At 1 hour into the cut, I calculated their progress. First layer perhaps 70% complete. 2 layers remaining. Time remaining for Section 4 pod 1 hour 14 minutes. The mathematics was impossible. At 1 hour 30 minutes, Elena made an announcement that stopped my hearts. I'm transferring my emergency oxy reserve to the Section 4 pod. Elena, Marcus started, there's an injection port in the wall. Standard Verith design for emergency supply transfer. Each of us carries a 90-minute reserve tank. I can get it to them through the port before we breach. That leaves you with only your main tank, Iris said. If something goes wrong, then something goes wrong, Elena said simply. But right now, 6 people are dying on a timer we can't beat. This changes the timer. I heard her connect the reserve tank through the port access panel, heard pressure transfer protocols engaging. My pod's instruments monitoring the same station systems registered the injection into Section 4 pod's atmosphere. 2 hours 15 minutes became 3 hours 45 minutes. Marcus had been cutting for 1 hour 32 minutes. He had somewhere between 90 minutes and 2.5 hours of work remaining. The mathematics had shifted, not to guaranteed success, but to possible success. To maybe. And apparently for humans, maybe was enough. I sat in my pod with condensation forming on the porthole window and thought about Elena Volkov giving away 90 minutes of her own life to buy 90 minutes for people she'd never seen. Why? I whispered, not expecting anyone to hear. But Marcus's voice came through the external speaker, slightly distorted by the cutting torch, as if he'd been listening for that exact question. Because, Chief, that's what people means. It's not a species classification, it's a commitment. The cutting continued. Marcus's breathing was steady over the comm, not labored but present, real, human. I checked my chronometer. 10 hours since the explosion, 8 hours since humans had decided to build instead of wait, 1 hour 42 minutes since Marcus started cutting through solid composite wall to reach 6 Verith, who now had 3 hours 37 minutes to live. The mathematics was close. Close enough that possible had become probable. Close enough that I let myself believe. The torch kept burning, the wall kept yielding, and I realized something that would change how I understood the universe. Humans didn't calculate survival the way we did. They calculated it by how many people they could bring with them. I pressed my forehead against the cold porthole and watched the lights of Vareth 9 burning steady in the darkness, powered by a reactor. Two humans had reconnected in a collapsing room broadcasting a signal low. Humans had spacewalked in tourist suits to fix sustained by air given freely by a human who'd decided 6 alien lives were worth 90 minutes of her own. Please keep working, I whispered again. Not because I doubted them anymore, but because I was starting to understand what they'd been trying to teach me from the beginning. That the question wasn't, can we survive? It was, who can we save while we do? At 2 hours and 8 minutes into the cut, the universe decided we hadn't earned our survival yet. The alarm was new, different from the explosion, different from pressure warnings, different from anything I'd heard in 16 years working on various stations. This was older, deeper. The kind of sound that came from security protocols written into the station's core programming decades ago and never updated because no one expected them to activate. Anti-boarding countermeasures. Military-grade failsafe. The kind of system designed to prevent hostile takeover of listening posts in contested space. The kind that interpreted someone cutting into an emergency pod as a breach attempt. Vareth text scrolled across every functional panel connected to the station's network. I read it through my pod's display and felt my skin shift to purple. Containment breach protocol active, unauthorized access detected, automatic detonation sequence engaged, 15 minutes to station sterilization. 15 minutes. Marcus had been cutting for 2 hours, 8 minutes. He had somewhere between 40 and 90 minutes of work remaining. Section 4 pod had 3 hours, 32 minutes of oxy left. None of which mattered if the station exploded in 15 minutes. I heard the humans process it in real time. Heard Iris's sharp intake of breath. Heard Silas curse in what might have been Yoruba. Heard Jonah's single word that somehow contained every emotion simultaneously. Fuck. Then Marcus spoke and his voice had changed. Not panicked, not rushed, but faster, more compressed. The voice of someone who'd just had their timeline cut by 80% and was already recalculating every variable. Iris Elena Command Core Section 1. Stop the sequence. Silas Jonah with me. We extract now. Marcus, the wall, Silas started, is coming down in the next 3 minutes, or everyone dies anyway. Move. I heard him attack the wall with focused intensity that comes from understanding careful doesn't matter if you run out of time. The torch screamed through composite layers. The sound through audio sensors was like something being born and dying simultaneously. Marcus told me later that Iris and Elena ran through station corridors, their boots hammering on metal deck plating, breathing harsh but controlled. They had 13 minutes, 41 seconds to reach Section 1, access the command core, and disable a security protocol that required command-level authorization to override. Authorization they didn't have. Authorization only 3 people on Vareth 9 had possessed. Station Commander Velix, dead. First Officer Shorin, dead. And me. Former Chief Engineer Theron demoted 6 months ago for refusing to implement cost-cutting measures that violated safety protocols. Demoted but not deleted from the system because Vareth bureaucracy moves slower than Vareth disasters. I activated the external speaker. My voice came out steady despite every muscle trying to vibrate apart. Human team, Command Core requires Vareth biometric authorization to abort the sequence. Only command staff can access the override. Silence. The kind that happens when everyone realizes simultaneously they're about to die because of security protocols designed to protect them. Then Marcus spoke somehow calm, matter of fact, like discussing scheduled maintenance instead of imminent death. Then you better run fast when we pull you out, Chief. The wall section shifted. I felt it through my pod's structure, vibration changing as stressed, composite finally gave up, pretending it could hold against determination backed by plasma torch and desperation. Breach in 30 seconds, Marcus said. Section 4 pod, everyone away from the hatch. We're coming through loud. I didn't have time to process. Section 4 pod was meters from Marcus. My pod, Section 11, was on the opposite side of the station. He was saving them first because they had less time. Because their oxy gauge read lower. Because humans did triage based on need rather than convenience, even when the station was minutes from converting itself into expanding debris field. The wall came down. I heard it through sensors metal, shrieking composite, shattering sudden whoosh of pressure equalization as pod atmosphere met corridor. Heard Marcus's voice strong and clear and steady. 6 people. Silas take point, Jonah rear guard, I've got anyone who can't run. Move now. They moved. I tracked them through audio sensors, through sounds of boots and breathing, and people making small sounds of distress as they tried to run on muscles that had been oxygen-deprived and hypothermic for hours. 10 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Iris, where are you? Marcus called. Marcus told me later what Iris said. Command Core accessing authorization panel now. It's asking for biometric confirmation. Verith retinal scan and dermal pattern match. Can you bypass? Not in 10 minutes. Not in 10 hours. This is military-grade security. It needs Verith command staff. 9 minutes, 47 seconds. Section 11 pod, Marcus said. Theron, what's your extraction point? I checked instruments. Junction 17, 3 corridors from your current position. We're coming to you. Stay ready. He was already running. I could hear it team moving at speed through damaged corridors, breathing synchronized footsteps coordinated like they'd trained for this exact scenario. 8 minutes, 21 seconds. They reached Junction 17. I heard Marcus hit the pod's external release mechanism, heard it grind open after third strike, heard him speak into darkness where I'd been sitting for 11 hours. 6 people. Anyone injured? Respiratory stress, hypothermia, mobile but weak. I pulled myself toward the hatch. My legs didn't want to work properly. I was chief engineer. I know the shortcuts to Section 1. Then you're with me. Everyone else, Silas and Jonah, will get you to the safest section we've got. Go. 7 minutes, 53 seconds. Marcus pulled me out of the pod. His hands were strong, warm. I hadn't realized how cold I'd gotten until I felt human body temperature through his gloves. He looked at me and I saw him for the first time. Human eyes smaller than ours, but carrying something I recognized immediately. Determination that didn't know how to quit. Can you run? He asked. My legs were shaking. My respiratory system was struggling. Every muscle felt wrong. Yes, I said. He believed me. Didn't question, didn't verify. Just turned and started moving and trusted I would follow. I followed. 7 minutes, 9 seconds. We ran through Verith 9's damaged corridors. Marcus in front, me behind, both moving at absolute edge of what our respective physiologies could sustain. He kept checking over his shoulder, kept his pace just barely within my maximum output, slowed at corners so I could catch up, sped up on straightaways when I had momentum. 6 minutes, 34 seconds. Iris, we're 2 minutes out, Marcus said. His breathing was elevated but controlled. Have the authorization panel ready. I learned later what Iris said, it's ready. But Marcus, I've been reading protocol documentation. The override requires not just biometric scan, but also command authorization code. 16-digit alphanumeric sequence. If Theron doesn't know it, he knows it, Marcus said with absolute certainty. I wanted to tell him I'd been demoted, that they'd stripped my command access 6 months ago, that my biometrics might not work, but I was too busy running and breathing to waste oxygen on words. 5 minutes, 51 seconds. We reached Section 1. Command Core had somehow survived intact walls lined with displays showing Verith text I could read, and Marcus couldn't. Elena was at the door. Iris had authorization panel hands hovering over controls she couldn't activate. Marcus pushed me forward. Gentle. Urgent. Do it, Chief. 4 minutes, 22 seconds. I placed my hand on dermal scanner. Felt familiar prickle of biometric reader mapping thermal patterns. Leaned forward for retinal scan, letting system read blood vessel patterns in my eyes. The panel turned green. Former Chief Engineer Theron, access level command staff. They hadn't deleted me from the system. Thank the ancestors for slow bureaucracy. 3 minutes, 57 seconds. The display changed, showed override sequence authorization screen, asked for 16-digit code only command staff were supposed to know. I knew it. Had memorized it in my first week as Chief Engineer, back when I still believed in following protocols and trusting systems. My hands were shaking. Couldn't stop them. Too much adrenaline, too much stress, too much everything. Marcus's hand settled on my shoulder, warm, steady, rounding. You've got this, Chief. 3 minutes, 19 seconds. I entered the code. Each digit felt like it took a century. Each press of virtual keys felt like fighting through atmosphere that had become solid. Confirmation request appeared. Verith text asking if I was absolutely certain I wanted to abort security protocol because aborting meant allowing potential hostile forces to continue their breach attempt. I selected confirm. 2 minutes, 43 seconds. The system processed. For 11 seconds, that felt like 11 years, nothing happened. Then every panel shifted from red to amber. Authorization accepted. Emergency override engaged. Detonation sequence aborted. The countdown stopped. 0 minutes 47 seconds remaining. 47 seconds from complete station sterilization. My legs gave out. Would have collapsed if Marcus hadn't been there to catch me. He lowered me to floor carefully like I was something valuable instead of a Verith engineer who'd barely stopped his own station from killing them all. "You did it, Chief," he said quietly. I looked up at the human who'd spent hours rebuilding a station that wasn't his, who'd reconnected reactor and collapsing section, who'd cut through wall for people he couldn't see, who'd run through damaged corridors carrying wounded aliens because leaving people behind wasn't something his species knew how to do. "You did it first," I said. The rescue ship arrived 23 minutes later. Not a human Union vessel. The nearest Union outpost was 2 days away at standard approach. But the nearest Verith outpost was only 6 hours away, and Silas's reconstructed antenna had reached them with perfect clarity. What I didn't expect was that it would be a military rapid response vessel. What I really didn't expect was Commander Varesh. She came through the docking port with armed security personnel flanking her large Verith eyes scanning the junction where we'd assembled. All 5 humans standing despite exhaustion. All 11 surviving Verith crew sitting or leaning because we'd been in pods too long and our bodies had forgotten how to stand. Varesh's eyes fixed on Marcus, on the humans. "Explain," she said in human standard, her accent clipping the word short, "why human personnel are the only ones mobile on a Verith station where 22 Verith crew members are dead." The implication was clear. The accusation hung in the air like debris from the explosion. Sabotage. I pulled myself to my feet. My legs didn't want to support me, but I made them anyway because this mattered more than physical comfort. "Commander Voresh," I said in Verith formal protocol voice. "I am former Chief Engineer Theron. I was trapped in emergency pod for 11 hours. I listened through audio sensors to everything these humans did." Voresh turned her attention to me. "Former Chief Engineer. Demoted 6 months ago for refusing to implement cost-cutting safety measures that violated proper engineering standards." Her expression shifted slightly. Recognition, maybe? Or respect for someone who'd been punished for being right. "Report," she commanded. I pulled out my scanner, which Marcus had retrieved from my pod, and activated recording function. It had been running since the explosion, capturing everything the pod's sensors had detected. At 1427 station time, an explosion of unknown origin destroyed Section 6. At 1439, 5 human technical observers established that all Verith command staff were deceased. At 1442, team leader Marcus Webb made the decision to repair the station rather than conserve resources. The following actions were completed. I played the sensor logs, showed Varesh the reactor reconnection in Section 7 hull fractures that could have killed Marcus and Silas at any moment. Showed her antenna rebuild spacewalk in tourist-grade emergency suits, Elena's Oxy Reserve donation. Showed her wall-cutting self-destruct activation sprint to stop countdown with 47 seconds remaining. Played it all without commentary because the data spoke more clearly than I could. When I finished, Voresh was quiet for a long moment. Her skin had shifted from normal gray-blue to something lighter. Surprise in Verith physiology. "These humans had limited survival time," she said slowly. "They spent it working." "Yes, Commander. They repaired Verith systems using methods not in our documentation." "Correct. They risked their lives for Verith crew they had never met." Multiple times, Voresh looked at Marcus again. Her expression was impossible for me to fully read, but I'd spent hours listening to humans work, learning their patterns of determination and compassion, and absolute refusal to quit. I was learning Verith expressions too. What I saw on Varesh's face was recalibration. The kind that happens when your understanding of a species suddenly needs to account for evidence that contradicts everything you thought you knew. "Human Union Protocol," Varesh said carefully, "states that technical observers are non-essential personnel during emergencies. They should secure themselves and wait for rescue." "Your protocol is wrong," Marcus said simply. The security personnel tensed. "You didn't tell a Verith military commander their protocols were wrong." Marcus continued unfazed. "Your protocol assumes the station is unsalvageable, assumes the only variable is body recovery. We looked at the same situation and saw different variables. We saw reactor that could be reconnected, antenna that could be rebuilt, people who could be saved. Your protocol optimizes for minimum loss. Ours optimizes for maximum save." Silence in the junction. "And the result," Marcus continued, voice quiet but absolutely firm, is that 11 Verith are alive right now who your protocol would have written off as acceptable casualties. Chief Engineer Theron stopped self-destruct countdown because we gave him the opportunity to do it. The station is damaged but functional because we decided damaged but functional was worth working toward. He paused, then added almost gently, your protocol isn't wrong for minimizing loss. It's incomplete for not trying to prevent it. Voresh studied him for another long moment. Then she turned to security personnel and spoke in rapid Verith. Reclassify. Human personnel are witnesses and asset preservers, not suspects. Begin station stabilization and medical support protocols immediately. The security team moved. Voresh looked at Marcus one more time. We will want complete documentation, she said. Every repair method, every modification, every decision point, for station protocols and training purposes. Happy to provide it, Marcus said. That's why we documented everything as we worked. Of course they had. Because humans didn't just solve problems. They made sure the next person facing the same problem would have a better starting point. 1 week later, I stood in a Verith Station command conference room presenting something I was calling the Web Protocol. The room was full. Human Union engineers, Verith military analysts, civilian oversight personnel from 3 different species, all watching the holographic display showing every step of Verith 9 repairs in excruciating technical detail. I walked them through reactor reconnection, antenna hybridization, wall-cutting parameters, self-destruct override procedures, spoke in formal technical language because that's what the situation required. But what I was really showing them, what they were really seeing, wasn't about technical procedures at all. It was about 2 different philosophies of survival. One that said minimize your losses, one that said maximize your saves. When I finished the presentation, a senior Verith analyst raised a question. Former Chief Engineer Theron, these human repair methods violate 12 separate safety protocols. They operated in structurally compromised sections. They used equipment outside its rated specifications. They made modifications to critical systems without proper authorization or testing. Correct, I said, and yet they succeeded. They succeeded because they understood something we didn't. The analyst leaned forward, I looked at Marcus sitting in the back row with his team. He caught my gaze and nodded slightly. Permission to speak truth instead of comfortable lies. They understood that protocols are tools for survival, I said carefully, not substitutes for it. We Verith built our systems to minimize loss during disasters. They built their approach to prevent loss during disasters. We focused on what we couldn't save. They focused on what they could. And the difference between those 2 perspectives is the difference between 11 dead Verith and 11 living ones. Silence in the conference room. The kind that happens when an entire room of people simultaneously realizes they've been asking the wrong question. The Web Protocol, I continued, isn't just about technical repairs. It's about changing the question from how do we survive this to who do we save while we survive this. It's about treating impossible as not yet solved instead of not worth attempting. It's about, I stopped, looked at the display showing Verith 9 now fully powered, now fully functional, now renamed Web Station in honor of the human who'd refused to let it die. It's about understanding that mathematics tells you what's probable, I said quietly. But humans teach you what's possible. The protocol was approved, would be implemented across all Verith stations within 6 months, would be taught to every engineering crew, every emergency response team, every person whose job involved the difference between survival and death. But that wasn't the real legacy. 3 months later, I stood in the training facility observation deck, watching Verith engineers work alongside human consultants on disaster scenario simulations, watching them learn not just the procedures, but the philosophy, not just the what, but the why, watching them learn that the right question isn't, can we survive? It's, who can we bring with us? Marcus found me there standing at the window watching mixed species teams coordinate with casual competence that suggested they'd been working together for years instead of months. They're doing good work, he said. They're learning from the best. He smiled slightly. We just did what needed doing. No, I said, turning to look at him. You did what you thought was right. There's a difference for me. He considered that, then nodded. Fair enough. We stood in silence watching engineers practice pulling survivors from simulated disaster scenarios, watching them choose to try instead of accept, watching them build instead of wait. I learned 3 things from you that day, I said finally. Want to know what they were? Sure. 1, you calculate risk by what's worth saving, not by probability of success. Marcus nodded. Reasonable. 2. Your word impossible actually means hasn't been done yet. Also fair. 3 protocols minimize loss. Humans prevent it. We built systems to help us survive disasters. You build solutions to stop them from killing people in the first place. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, we don't think of it that way. We just don't like leaving jobs unfinished. That's exactly what I mean, I said. You don't even recognize how different you are. He smiled at that, the kind of smile that suggested he understood, but didn't need to say it out loud. Below us, a Verith engineer successfully completed reactor reconnection in simulated collapsing section. Her human partner gave her the human gesture of approval, raised hand thumb extended. She returned it awkwardly, still learning the motion. But she was learning, they all were. There's something else you should know, I said quietly, about third engineer Kaylee. Marcus turned to look at me and I saw recognition in his eyes. Jonah had told him. Jonah visits her family every quarter, I continued, brings reports on web station's operations, tells them their daughter's memory is honored here, that the work she started trying to maintain proper safety protocols, even when pressured to cut corners, continues through the training programs we've built. Her child would have been born by now. They named the baby Kaylee, too. Jonah brings pictures. Marcus was quiet for a moment. That's good. That matters. It does, I agreed. Because you taught us that people aren't just data points and survival calculations. They're connections, legacies, reasons to try. Below us, another team successfully completed an antenna reconstruction drill. Another team stabilized a collapsing section long enough to extract simulated survivors. Another team bypassed a critical system failure using improvised solutions that wouldn't appear in any manual. They were learning. Thank you, I said to Marcus, for showing us there was another way. Thank you for being worth saving, he replied. And somehow that was the most human thing he could have said. That we were worth saving not because the math worked out, but because we were people. And humans, I had learned, don't abandon people. Station Webb orbits in Verith space, now fully operational, a monument to the day 5 humans looked at a dying station and decided the difference between damaged and dead was worth fighting for. I teach there. Train Verith engineers in the Webb protocol, show them sensor logs of that day, tell them about Marcus and Iris and Silas and Jonah and Elena. Tell them about the humans who taught us that the question isn't whether we can survive, it's who we can save while we do. And every time I tell that story, I start the same way. My name is Theron. The oxy gauge was dropping and I was listening to someone cut through a wall for hours. They shouldn't have made it in time. The mathematics was clear. But I learned something that day about humans that changed how I understand the universe. I learned that humans don't ask, can we? They ask, who can we bring with us? And that difference saved my life.